So this session we want to talk through a case study. One of the things that has come up is about hearing God, applying that to my work, to my business, to my life, the interaction of that. How do I hear God, who is limitless, translate that so that I understand it, and then apply it to something that is limited and finite? That's challenging in itself. But then the kia kaha, kia ngaka nui, be brave, have courage, Joshua, it actually takes immense courage to live that out. So what we want to do is do a little bit of a case study and then open it up for question and answer. Just you can ask anything you want to, is really what we're going to do. We are not perfect at this. We're still working it out. But we've had two major moves in our lives, which has opened up a whole new level. We want to unpack the most recent one, which is when we moved from California to Pennsylvania. How did we hear God? And what did that even look like? Who was involved? How did we apply what we heard to practical? When God says, expand, reach out, how do you work this out? So don't just think about what happened, but how it happened and how you could apply that to your own life. And then the third one is walking it out. So when God speaks, was it rosy? Did we skip through the dandelions as we translated and moved? Did it work out all financially well? Are you guys are you just above everything else and you skip through the clouds and everything works out fine? Or is it possible that it really is a walk it out? And so we want to unpack that. Are we good?
Yeah.
So I'm here with the lovely, beautiful best friend of mine. Her name is Janine, and we do this life together. So Janine, our most recent expansion was about hearing God and moving from California to Pennsylvania. How did that even start out? Were we even looking to move?
We weren't looking to move, and we had said to each other we definitely won't. So our youngest at a year ago had 3 years of high school to go, and we were like, we won't even consider it until she's done. It felt like that was the fair thing to her, that she would finish her high school career. But we came out of church about August last year, and so she had done her first year of high school entirely online because our other daughter is vulnerable to COVID, so she just stayed home. So she never set foot on high school campus. She starts as a sophomore, second year high school, and she has just got past this is horrible, everyone else is connected and I'm not, and she's just settled, she's back in youth group, she's thriving. But she walks out of church and she says, I think our season here is done. And we went, what? This in the natural, it was so unexpected. So we said, are you serious? Like, would you even consider moving somewhere else? And she said, yeah, as long as you find me a good school. Yeah. And we're like, oh my gosh. So we went home, we talked more about it. But this is after church, so it's maybe, we go to early church, it's maybe 10:30. By lunchtime, Andy has us moving there, moving somewhere. Our oldest comes home. She goes to another church, so she went to a later service. She's come home and Dad's got the map out. She's like, what is happening? Like, it's okay. We think God might be talking to us about moving. So why don't you share the prophetic word?
So,
you shared that this morning.
Yeah, I shared this morning, and I just want to just really briefly say this again. So I come home, and we talked afterwards and said it was almost like our 16-year-old, she was 16 at the time? 15. Our 15-year-old made a prophetic declaration. So be careful and aware of what your stakeholders have to say. They're a part of you. What you do is not just you. It's about those that are coming with you. So be aware of what they're saying. And if you're over the age of 33, when Jesus exited, it may not even be about you. We think it is, but it may not be.
Well, here's the other thing that I think is really cool about you highlighting Holly, is that Holly's 4 of 4.
She's the fourth child.
Fourth child of 4. So she has had a struggle at times with feeling like she's heard. Now, she's loud, she's opinionated, so she gets heard, but she hasn't always felt that way. So the fact that God spoke to her, of all of us, that he chose her, and then throughout this journey, it's like every time we needed to make a decision, it felt like it came through Holly, which made her relationship with the Lord and her voice very important in the move, which I think was a gift of the Lord to her that she needed, which I think is pretty cool.
So, and that is a key phrase, is the value of your voice. So, husbands, is the value or the volume of your voice of your wife or your spouse, is that, how valuable is it? How loud is that? Are you listening? Are you listening through your children? Are you listening to that? It's a real key thing to look at that. So I came home and something got released. So John 6, about 63 says, my words are spirit and they are life. When God speaks, it's life. And you may not even realize it, but it just releases this excitement or energy to do something. So I come home, open my journal, and I'm like, it just had this question. Well, if we did move, where would we go? So this is just playing. I'm just playing. Open up my journal, and I draw a little map of America, and I'm like, I wonder where all our clients that I'm working with right now, the cities that I have people that are working with, where in the States is that? And I start to map them out, and I'd never done this before. And there's a map. There's 2 on the West Coast, and then everything else is on the East Coast. And I'm like, oh wow. And then the next question, which in hindsight was probably the Holy Spirit, it's probably God, was where would be central? Like where would be strategically central? And I map out, and I start to draw on my journal the distance of how long it would take to drive from this place to this place. Where could I fly from there to there? And I suddenly realized, not suddenly, I work it out to be in between Harrisburg and Philadelphia. And there's a whole heap more in there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And now I feel really excited. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, is this just me or is this God? At that point, the family like, what are you doing?
I was excited, but I was also aware of my kids' response. Like they were a little bit like, what is happening? Dad is planning it already. And we haven't even, this was just this morning. So then I think the key thing was when Andy found that prophetic word he told you about this morning when he went back. And now it's like, oh,
this is not just me.
This is real. That really, and we heard Holly say it, but honestly it wasn't until probably a few days later we went, that was a prophetic decree. We didn't recognize the moment. We felt life on it. It popped the lid off, but we didn't recognize till later actually that was her making a declaration that started the journey. So we come to this place and we're like, okay, we think this is God. I think, was it that week we had a retreat at our house?
Yes. So we had an executive retreat in that same week, and we were sensing and had confirmed from a prophetic word from 12 months ago that it was a particular location on the East Coast, somewhere between Harrisburg and Philadelphia, and the prophetic word was a red pin on the East Coast, which is what I'd put in my journal, not a pin but a dot, a key to unlocking the cities of Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, proximity driving, or it's crazy, oh my gosh. So that happens, we have this retreat at our house, nobody knows. I've been texting, so key thing here is who are the stakeholders? Who's going to be influenced by, if and when we do this, who will be affected? So obviously our kids, but then what's the next circle of stakeholders? And for me, that was technically my boss. We work in partnership, but that was Chris Valentin. So I'd text Chris and say, hey, I want to talk about...
was that same day?
I texted him the same day, but he didn't respond until
was it a week?
A few days later.
Right.
It's about the weekend. So I can't remember which came first, the exec retreat or...
I think the exec retreat.
Okay, and then I'll come back to the Chris.
So we normally have prophetic teams that come in to minister to our people, and there was one extra slot. And I was like, well, we're making big decisions. Nobody knows. I'm going to sit there and see. And I had word after word of... that just kind of confirmed it was about green. So one of the things we've always loved about that area is it's really green. California is brown. It's burned off for 5 or 6 months of the year.
The entire area around our house was burned in a wildfire. So it's literally, it's burned trees.
It's burned trees. It's, it's brown. And so green was important. And so I had a couple of people that said something about, are you going back to New Zealand? Because I just see green. And I'm like, and we're like, every time we'd been, we'd use the word home. Like, this just feels like home. So they started talking. So they heard home and they heard green and they assumed it was New Zealand. So I had word after word, and then I had one that was from actually another third year that had worked with Andy, and she, again, they knew nothing. She said, I just see you guys, you as a family going on another big adventure. It's like when you came from New Zealand, but this time it will be easy. And you're going to a place where it's green, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
And so this time it would be
easy.
Easy. Did you hear that? Remember that one?
Jesus. Yes. Because it wasn't particularly easy travelling with 4 young children and no income for 3 years. That was not easy, that first trip. So so there was all this prophetic confirmation of, and nobody had heard a thing. I actually pulled her aside afterwards because she was a friend and said, do you know what you just said?
So we went from there. So we're hearing God move. When? Sounds like it's now. When would the timing be? What would work for the kids? So that's August. The school year goes from August to the following May in the States. So we wouldn't be moving before the end of the year, but we realized it's going to take that long to sell our house, and suddenly we've got this green light. Well, there's some other stakeholders. There's people that I'm working with, and then I want to get confirmation. So Bryden was one of the ones I reached out to and say, Bryden, you know me, we're hearing God, can I run this by you? Be wise counsel. And all of those confirmed it. One of the significant ones was calling Chris Valentin. So he responds, and I said, Chris, 2 things I want to talk to you about. One, what I'm hearing God, and I tell him, this is what I'm hearing, this is what's going, this is what's happened, and no decision has been made, but this is what I'm hearing. Number 2 is how that's going to affect heaven and business, because we started that as a department of, it's a self-funded department of Bethel Church. Technically, it is owned. The brand, the name, the IP is owned by Bethel Church. Andy's idea, Andy started it, but at the beginning, God said, give it to Bethel. And I thought my life was over, but God has been gracious and good and kind and phenomenal. And so I'm imagining I will be Red Pin on the East Coast, Michelle, who's part of my team in Reading, and I will carry on as we are and operate remotely and in between the two. Chris says, well, let's just talk about that first. He said, Andy, you built this. I had very little to do with it. I can't see why Bethel would hold on to it. You take it with you. Oh my gosh, let's get that writing. Let's get that in writing. And then he proceeds to talk further. What's the point? It's this process and the stakeholders. Talk to Michelle. She's like, oh yeah, I was just waiting for this to happen. Like, it was almost like everyone around us was like, it's kind of, this is obvious. I'm surprised it's taken you so long to get this. And so that was that step. What was the next step?
The next step, we have to actually find where we're going to live. So we had...
And it was our wedding anniversary.
Yeah, we had some event that was over on the East Coast, and it was our wedding anniversary right after. So we did a 3-day treasure hunt on our anniversary. You tell this, because I love how you describe you, and it's easier if you say it rather than I say it.
What she's trying to get to is how bad I was. So we didn't...
Being kind to him.
We didn't know exactly where, so now we're going to spy it out and say, well, exactly what is this? God hasn't told us go to this, but we have a sense of location. And by that stage, there were a series of schools that we found as possible for Holly. So this is a big deal as the high school for Holly. And we got to the point of realizing it's a boarding school, but we don't want our girl without, as long as we don't need to drive more than 10 minutes, that's not going to happen. So there's these schools that are outstanding. One's in Boston. So remember the prophetic word, Boston, Philadelphia, New York. And then there's about five around
6, yeah.
This particular area in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So we decided we're going to drive up through there. Crazy connections in Harrisburg. We stop there. I'm hoping it's Harrisburg. There's a wonderful church. It's aligned. We stop, we have favor, pastor prays for us, connects us to someone that feels like my brother, and it's great. It's here. And Janine's like,
No, we both walked out. It was an amazing connection for both of us. Like, we felt like if we moved there, the table is set for us, just join this. We walked out, got in the car, it was pouring with rain, I remember, and we got in the car and we looked at each other and we said, do you feel like it's here? And we both went, no. We wanted so desperately for it to be there because it made sense.
So I was irritable. Just straight out irritable. I was like edgy, grumpy. We drive to this stupid place, couldn't go anywhere. It's like, couldn't it be just here? It would be so much easier. What about the prophetic word that said it's going to be easy? So I'm grumpy. But we had
For the whole first day, really.
Second half of the first day.
Second half.
After we'd been to that place.
Yes.
So that's the first day. The second day, we drive around literally all of these different places within that area to check it out. So we're looking for Colossians 3:15, let peace be your governor. John 6, my spirit is, when the Spirit of God speaks, there's life released. Secondly, peace. Do we sense a peace? Or the opposite, do I have a hesitation? Whether I understand it or not. So we drive around all these little towns.
Some of which are Bethlehem,
Nazareth.
Emmaus, Nazareth. So we're literally on the road to Emmaus, and we're like, "Is Jesus? Are you here?"
And he's
Jesus was not on
He's
the
not
road
in
to
Emmaus. He's not in Nazareth. He's not in Bethlehem.
Oh my gosh! So we get to the end of the second day, and now he's just playing grumpy.
I'm
He's
discouraged.
Like, she's discouraged and grumpy.
And I just like, let's just go to Boston. Like, let's just go check out that place because this is not fun. And then, then Janine, I think it was it was you. It was my wife saying, no.
That's there if it wasn't you.
There is something about this particular location. I don't think we've fully explored it. We need to slow down. Shall I say that again? Slow down and actually engage and have another look. Because what we've done is gone GPS. And for those of you unaware, if you GPS a city, and then go where it says, usually it takes you to the police station, which is not
That's
usually the
discovered.
nicest part of the town or city. You go like, this is ugly. Yeah, that's normal. So we slow down and we sat at a coffee place. So for me, that's sitting and writing down in my journal. For Janine, it was going for a walk. For me, it's a coffee. For her, it's a hot water with some non-caffeinated tea. So I'm literally right down, and we agree to be still and know God, Psalm 46:10, and just write down the clues go back over what he said. What did God say? Well, if you're not sure, what do you see? What did he say? Or what do you remember? 3 things. What's the testimony? What do you see? And what did God say? So what he said, I wrote down the clues and we wrote them down together. So he talks about, I'm a bridge. So there's something about a bridge. There's something about you going home. Home is the presence of the Father, which is peace. So something about peace. There's something about New Zealand. There's something about the log college. There's part of these histories. So we write down all of these different things. Scripture, you lead me beside the still waters. So there's something about, so all of these different clues we wrote down. Then what happened?
So then we just went looking for the clues. And we also asked a little like, this GPS thing just did not work for us. So give us a strategy for when we go into the towns. So we actually went back over the same area in the third day that we'd done the second day. But we're like, we need a strategy. Our strategy didn't work. And so we just said, will you help us? And so instead we would look up, like, say we're going to New Hope, is one of the towns. We would look and say, what's New Hope kind of famous for? Like, what's there? And then we'd look for that. So maybe we went to a cafe, or we went to an ice cream shop, or we went to something that they were known for. And so we actually then saw some things. So can I tell the next part? Because it was fun. So we ended up in Doylestown, which is, it's actually one of the towns that had been highlighted because a good friend of mine in Reading, that's her hometown, and her mum still lives there. So we were like, we're going to check this out.
We know one person.
Yeah. And so we go to Doylestown. We end up there at lunchtime. We have lunch, and we've seen a few of our clues. They've come to pass. You can tell about the lake, but we're in Doylestown, and I said, I want to just check out something there. And Andy was running back to the car, and he went back a different way. And on the porch, on the veranda of this, is a big vinyl sign, and it's got the Koru's Wellness Centre. Now, most of you New Zealanders, you'll understand that the Koru is the symbol of New Zealand, and you do not see it in America. So to see it written and to have the Koru there is like, you could not get anything more New Zealand than this. And there it is, like hanging, obviously. You have a conversation with the guy.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, you from New Zealand? He goes, no, I'm not. But the koru, it's a Maori word. I'm like, this is crazy.
And so I had gone into a little store, and I had seen some things. One of my clues was a sheep. There was 2 or 3 things in this little store in the middle of Doylestown as well that were on our list. We drove past, one of them was a field of yellow flowers. Right there was this field. It wasn't flowers, but I had just seen yellow in the field and assumed it was flowers, but there it was, just this bright yellow field.
For me, it was, you leave me beside still water. So as we're driving to this particular area, I'm looking on the GPS, like, did you realize that Jesus knows more than Google? And so on the map, it's like, there looks like a body of water. It's a lake. I'm like, let's go check that out. We zoom in, and as we zoom in, it's called Peace Valley. I'm like, oh my gosh!
So
my gosh!
We drive down the road, and Andy had this thing about covered bridges. They've got all these covered bridges there. And we come close to that. I think we somehow came in a back entrance to Peace Valley. But there's a covered bridge there. And we pause because it's one way. And there's a little playground there. And it's Andy and somebody's playground. And we're like,
oh my gosh.
This is getting a little weird. I think we found our place.
So fast forward, that we know now, that's the area. So now we've heard God expand to the East Coast. Red pen on the East Coast. Now we've got the red pen. We know the rough area. We've sold our house. Well, we're trying to sell our house. We're applying it. I've got stakeholders. I've got agreement. We walk through this. Now we're starting to walk it out. And we think it's going to be easy, right?
They had the word. The word said it's going to be easy.
And
I'm holding on to the word.
Don't build small. Build bigger. So we're looking for a house that's going to be like ours. It's going to be a retreat center on the East Coast. We're going to be able to sell a house for amazing money. It's going to be phenomenal. And what happens?
It was not easy. The house didn't sell until the last minute.
Literally last minute.
Literally the last possible minute. We could not find a house over on the East Coast, so we spent our summer in 3 different Airbnbs in the Poconos, which is known as being a beautiful place, but it was an hour and a half from where we needed to be. So multiple trips down this ugly highway.
And it was an hour and a half away from the location, because at the location we couldn't even find a house to rent.
And it was, if you could, it was too small, and it was $10,000 for just a few weeks. $10,000. We're like,
or more. And so where we were staying an hour and a half away was still $10,000 a month. I'm thinking, this is the stupidest thing. Where's God in this? This is not easy. This is expensive. Maybe they translated expensive to easy. Like, who knows what's going on?
The thing with the easy word, it kept me anchored, because I realized in those moments, the only thing that's not easy is my stress. Because if I fully believed he had it handled, it is easy. Then I'm just like, oh, I'm right. Oh, it costs $10,000. Oh, well, he's going to provide. Oh, this is frustrating, but oh well, he's going to provide. If I was fully in trust. And so we had this sense of, this is easy. Not some questions in the natural sense, but it allowed me just to be, I'm kind of along for the ride. Until we're getting really close to the wire. All our Airbnbs are, our bookings are coming to an end. And you've got to realize we have now 3 of our kids are leaving home, 2 of them for the first time. And I want them desperately to be in a home. I want them to have a sense of, this is my home base. And they want that desperately before they leave, before they launch out to college, to university and to things. So I'm like, Jesus. So we find a house.
So we kind of don't settle was one of the words.
Oh, yeah.
Don't settle.
Don't settle.
So we're walking through all these things. We've got this list of what we're looking for. We finally find a house it's on the edge. Like, God, if you would just give us more freedom of where to go, we could find tons of houses,
That we
but
can
none of
afford.
them in the area. and to buy the equivalent of what we had in California, we're talking an extra $1 million. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So we're looking, and finally we find the best case. We couldn't even rent a house for less than $5,000 a month. I'm like,
And they
that's
were
just
ugly.
a waste of money.
Ugly. You know it's bad when your 18-year-old son, who's really cruisy, walks in, takes one look, and then says, "I'll be waiting in the car." Yeah, but like that bad.
So we start to realize, well, what if we bought a house and we just buy a house, and even if it's an in-between, like for 2 years, 2 years. So we start to kind of, is that settling? We're wrestling with, is this settling, God? This doesn't feel like it's easy. And we find this place within our budget. It's got the right number of rooms. It's got the perfect place for our daughter who's going to living at home.
So it has, one of the deals was that our oldest, who's had a lot of health challenges, needs some support, but if she's 22, she also needs independence. So the deal is we're looking for something that has a basement that's set up or the similar. So this place has a phenomenal in-law suite. Like, it's beautiful. We would want to live there. Beautiful. The actual house, not so much. And so we're like, well, she'd be really happy, except she's feeling guilty because she knows, this is lovely.
Not so much.
Mum hates this, but I'm like, I can make myself happy anywhere. I can choose to be content. It's okay. So we're walking through it.
First time you walked into it?
I went, I hate this house.
And it was not quiet. It was loud, as in what she said.
Like, this, no. Okay, ladies, you'll understand this. The laundry, everyone has to walk through the master bedroom, and the laundry is the bathroom is tiny, and the laundry is somehow in there. So I had imaginations of my son bringing his stinky wrestling stuff and dropping it on the floor of what's basically my bedroom. I'm like, oh my, and there's nowhere to put another laundry. I'm like, really? This is not good.
So we're trying to wrestle around, but this is the best. Like, it's got some outside area. It'd be great for the dog. We can make this work, and we got a place. And I could live there.
So finally, I said, okay, I can make this work. We put an offer in as accepted, except they wanted a different settlement date. And
Overnight.
I'm lying awake, and I'm like, oh, I really don't like this
Now,
house.
just to pause, we're on the same, we did not proceed without us both being in agreement.
I agreed. But in my heart of hearts, so this is my dialogue with the Lord at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Jesus, is this really the best that you have for us? And this is what I hear. He said, if that's all you're willing to believe for.
If that's all you're willing to believe for.
And I went, well, heck no. I have big faith when it comes to houses, and I have big testimonies of the Lord coming through, and I know his faithfulness, and I really don't like this house. And so I was just like, okay. So, but now everyone's, Andy in particular, because I'd been back and forth wrestling this through, but even the kids are like, yay, we may
We've
not
got
be our dream
certainty.
house,
We've
we
got
have
something
certainty.
to move forward with.
And I know now I've got to tell them in the morning. I wait till the morning, and I'm like, honey, I'm so sorry. I just don't have peace about us buying this house. I felt like the Lord said, I told them the story that the Lord had said.
And my response was, what the heck? This is crazy. You're never like this. What's going on?
It's very, very rare that I'm back and forth. It's very rare that I'm flipping. And I was just like, I know I've been back and forth with this house, but I can't find peace about it. I've been trying to do it because I felt like it was the right thing, and now I feel like it's not the right thing, and so I need to tell you I'm so sorry. Here goes the certainty again. Sorry, everybody.
And she's the one that's wanted the certainty the most.
For my babies to have a nest.
So full disclosure, I walk through
It was not very
angry. I'm now like, what?
I knew it was going. He very rarely gets angry, and he was very sweet in his anger. He wasn't nasty, mean.
We went for a walk. And so, no, we need to walk for a bit further.
We did a number of blocks.
But by the time we got, it's like, okay, she's heard God. This is an invitation. And what it means is that there is a way forward, but we don't yet have the right perspective. So there's some limitations in what we're looking at. So once I process the emotion, oh my gosh, I had an emotion.
You did.
That was an emotion.
Good job.
And I was aware of it.
Well done.
Miraculous.
It's progress.
That's growth, by the way. That's growth. So once we work through that, like, what are we going to do now? Because we have some. God doesn't have issues with time, but we have some time.
Some big issues.
Count
By
your
this
days.
stage, I think we had just a few weeks left in the Airbnb. Like, it's coming close.
Do we fork out another $10,000? I'm like, this is unbelievable.
And by now, our oldest is already working, so she's already out there. So the family's already split. There's challenges with that. There's a lot going on.
There's 2 dogs.
Three dogs.
Airbnb, 3 dogs. Oh my gosh, we had that many.
3 dogs and no space for them outside, and bears wandering past, and it's all happening.
And in the middle of this, just so you know, in the middle of this, the family's doing really good together, and we're having people. So we're in transition. Like, what on earth? Are we hearing right? Is this?
We're living out of a suitcase for 2 months.
And in the middle of that, I get a call from a friend in Singapore, very, very successful business guy. Hey, I'm in the States. Where are you guys? Can I pop in with my wife? We want to come and say hello. So he drives out an hour and a half, 2 hours to spend a day with us. We get invited to this couple with another couple from Pennsylvania, and we connect with them, and they just say, hey, we just want to say welcome to Pennsylvania, and write out a check for $10,000. Oh, just welcome to Pennsylvania. I'm like, what?
So there's favour happening, there's good things happening, but the reality is at one of those Airbnbs, it's stinking hot and it's humid and it has no AC.
It's got no air conditioning.
It's the tiniest little thing. We're all stacked on top of each other. In the natural it was miserable, but we had we had amazing good moments and amazing, like, this is really tough and we're going to all sweat together while playing some stupid video game because there's nothing else to do at night. So beautiful times. The other thing I want to say about that moment when I said, this is what the Lord said and we have to say no. I actually remember back that the exact same thing happened with our previous house. Where at the moment when just before we had to decide, are we going for this house that we can't afford, there was another house that we could have made work. And so when we told the kids, I said, remember that time? Because it was the same reaction. It was me again. And I said, remember that time Redondo Court when, we all went and we thought it was okay. It was the best of what we thought we could afford. And we Mum said no. She felt like God said, just hold out and remember the house. And so it was good, even in that moment, to say our history, our testimony of this family with houses is that the Lord has provided more than we can ask or imagine. And it's been last minute. We know what it is to say no to what looks good but is not the best. Come on, guys, we can do this again. And I'm so sorry, but I feel like this is the Lord. And it worked out really good last time, so
trust us.
And so we gathered them all.
So a couple of key things in this is, how do you walk your family through this? Because, like, what if mum and dad is like yanking the chain? Like, are we doing this or not doing this? And so there's emotion for them. So allow them to process this, and then use it as a teaching moment. We're better to actually, if you guys find someone you want to marry and you get to the altar and you realize I'm not sure about this, you're better to walk away at the altar rather than 2 weeks later after honeymoon.
So this was the language I used first thing in the morning, was like, honey, it feels like I'm at the altar with this house and I've decided I'm really not sure.
We're better to make that decision now than once we're in here. And we could get out of it. We could easily get out of it.
Because we hadn't agreed on everything.
So we walk through that. They process it a little bit. And then finally, then we come with a strategy. Here's a strategy. We get 3 big A3 size pieces
candy.
of paper.
We bought candy.
Yeah.
Because that helps.
It always helps. Candy always helps. And we go through. So let's relook at our assumptions. This is what we heard God say. This is what we translate it to mean. And now we're walking this out. So let's go back and just check these assumptions. We wrote page 1. This is what is non-negotiable for us in a house as a family. Okay, everybody? So 15, by then 16, 18, 20, 22 roughly. The kids, all a part of this. and we write down on this big sheet on the wall in this Airbnb, this is what's non-negotiable. Now, before that, we threw on some worship music and prayed for a little bit. So before that, we actually just had a little bit of time as a family. Everyone's different, so we just put on worship music and just, you guys go, come back here in 10 minutes, and this is what we're going to do. First sheet. Second sheet, this is what we would love, but it's not critical. For example, previously, minimum of 1 acre.
Because we love land. We'd been on land. We love that feel.
We got to a point, non-negotiable is a house.
With a country feel.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal for all of us.
So we were processing these sorts of things. Then we're walking through what we would love. We would love more land. We would love this. We would love that. And we put that. Then the third sheet is what Janine touched on, is what was the story? We remember. As a family, we said, what do you remember happened? Tell us again about the testimonies of houses that have been provided for. And we remembered the testimonies as a family.
That was actually huge because that changed the atmosphere. Because, when you're looking at what do we want, what's essential, what's whatever, not essential but we'd like, it's kind of the focus on the house. When you shift the focus to what has he already done, and they've got their own memories of, what the Lord has done in terms of, and particularly we have miracle stories of what the Lord has done in that area. So, and they've been a part of every part of that. So to think about that again, to turn your focus back to remembering how his goodness has shown up in other times, that's huge for shifting the atmosphere. And so suddenly there's like, okay, we've been here before, we know what to do, we can do this. In the natural we're disappointed, but okay, here we go. And so what we did then was we looked again on the Realtor.com.
So the property place with our new search parameters.
So now it doesn't have to have an acre because it's, you can put that in the parameters. So now it doesn't have to have an acre.
Same, we know the location.
We know the location. There was a couple of other things that I think it changed slightly. And now 3 houses pop up that we hadn't seen before. And we're like, oh, well.
Because they're different, very different.
Yeah, they're different than what we had expected. And so we're, okay, we can do that. So Andy calls, our agent was actually out of town, but he started calling the agents for these houses. He was a bit cheeky.
So first one was an open home. That's easy.
Oh yeah, that was easy. Second
home, we couldn't get a hold of anybody. So we thought, let's do a drive-by and snoop around and see. Third place, so I just called the company. Now, in the States, you have an agent, and your agent does everything for you. But I'm like, what the heck? They're not there, and let's just push it and see, knock on doors. I call just the phone number for that company that listed the house. And this lady goes, oh, well, I can meet you there. I said, hang on. I don't want to mess up the commissions and how you guys do. Oh, no, that's okay. I won't take any commission from this. I'll pass that all on to your agent.
She wasn't the agent for the house. She's
not the listing agent.
Nothing. But she said, yeah, sure, I'll show you.
I wonder if she's a real person.
Oh, she's an agent.
Maybe she's an angel. So we visit the first one.
First house, it's like, it's okay.
Second house, this looks fantastic. A little bit of road noise, but it actually this is actually all right.
Okay.
Third house, because one of the non-negotiables is that when we walk into the house as a family, we have to experience unanimous peace. Everybody.
Six powerful, very different people.
Very different individuals. Even the dogs, but we didn't take the dogs with us because they kind of...
And that's our history. So we've owned 2 houses in the States, and both of them, the minute we walked in, everybody, like the first house, they were quite small, they coming up to me. We've trained them not to shout in front of the real estate agents by now. But they'd come up and whisper to me, I think this is the one. I know. Yeah. So that's been our history, right? With the first 2 houses, everybody on the same page. And
so to contrast, house in Reading, 3 acres, 6,000 square feet, dream home, miracle story, backs onto a wilderness area with over 17 miles of trails. It's phenomenal. Solar, 20 minutes outside of town.
Swimming pool.
It's just amazing. the renegotiation, reassumption, it's a village or a estate
It's a tiny.
of 118 homes in
it's
an
just-
area, but it's surrounded by farmland, not by shops or anything else. So that gives you a context of what it looks like. We drive in, there's houses everywhere, but it's actually beautiful.
It's beautifully done. Not what we normally would choose.
It's 3/4 of an acre, of which the house is on probably a third of that, and then the back of it is trees. But then you're right next to the other neighbours, which is new and different for us.
Not what we would choose.
So not what we would expect, it's different. We walk in,
And everybody has the same response. I think this is the one. And we're like,
instant.
this is it. And we walk around and, check out the bedrooms, and people are negotiating which bedroom, but everyone's happy with their bedroom. That's just another miracle if you have kids, that everyone's on the same page with who gets what. It's got a basement for Hannah that's fully set up, or can be very quickly.
We go
What
through the
else?
whole process. Turns out there's another one looking through, so it's a bidding situation. And so we're like, what do we do? So we pray, hear God for... all of the kids have to hear God for the price, come back in. And we ended up listening to the kids rather than us, because we're like, heck, we can't afford not to get this now.
Yeah.
But listen to the kids, which saved us probably $5,000, less than what we thought we'd have to put in, and they were right. That's good. So what's the point? We heard God, we applied it, we walked it out. It's messy, it's not like what we expected. We had to reassess and relook at it, but we've gone from what we thought would be Doylestown, which is not cool. The location is called New Hope. New Hope. It's phenomenal. There's so many pieces. We're still adjusting to that, and we know it's process. But this is walking it out, which takes courage, which is not God said and it happens. It's God said and I walk and I keep listening along the way. I involve the stakeholders. So a key question is, what if there's disagreement? There was never disagreement here. Or there could have been, because when she says, I don't... But we're learning to listen to your voice in that process. What if it doesn't work? It didn't work like what we expected. It was months later. We gave every opportunity for God to sort this out in my agenda, and it didn't. But the delay actually became a gift of what happened with our family as we were driving across the country, singing loudly, the memories that were made.
Yeah, so my heart in the timing was, I want a nest for my babies before they fly the nets, right? That's the heart behind it. And when, that doesn't start to come together, but the real heart is, I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel connected. And so we had a really open discussion where they're like, yeah, we want that too. But what it really uncovered is that nest is us. And the house, yeah, that's nice. We did get in. The last of our stuff, I think, came the day before Emily left for college. But the real thing is, I had to look and say, be willing to let go my picture of how to build family, because that summer was probably our last summer with all the kids at home. And so, I wanted it to be a great summer. And I said to our son at one point, son, I'm sorry this didn't work out quite how we expected. I wanted it to be amazing that we're in this house. We got to go to New York. We'd visit all these places. And he goes, Mum, and he starts listing off all the things we've done and all the amazing opportunities he's had. And I realized, the Lord did it anyway, that there's connection and beautiful memories. And some of the beautiful memories are the sweating together and seeing the bear while the boys are out of town as we're walking outside, and there it is, like all those things.
The skunk.
While they're away, it always happens when they're away. Andy and Ben are away.
And just so you know,
all those things.
I mean, we're still in process. There's still a $20,000 insurance claim because the moving company smashed, broke, lost.
When we got there,
they have a business sign.
Yeah,
I get an email a month later from someone in a completely different state. Hey, I just got delivered this sign. It's not ours. We tracked down the website and we realized, this is you. Is this yours? Do you want us to ship it to you?
Our bed, our mattress that was a relatively new mattress arrived black.
It's messy.
Rocks that were mouldy. So it continued not being easy, And I could have focused on being mad with God about it's not easy. Like everything, it felt like it was difficult. And I realized, when he said it was easy, it was on my plate. I should have asked, what do you mean by that? Like, what's easy?
Help me understand, what does easy look like, Jesus?
Yeah, what piece of it is going to be easy? Because every time he's talking to you, it's actually an opportunity for dialogue. And I missed it, and I went, okay, I assumed some things that were going to be easy that weren't easy, but now I'm looking for where's the easy part. And last time when we moved from New Zealand to Reading, we had no income for 3 years. Well, financially,
it's easy.
This was easy. This is a piece of cake compared to what it was all those years ago.
Which
so
is possibly the biggest
own
part.
heart.
When you're writing out checks for $10,000 a month, that's not fun, but then it was taken care of. So it's like, okay, the biggest thing that shifted is trust.
Yes.
And trusting, okay, God, you got this. This is not what I would do. This is not a good stewardship, but I trust you in this. Another piece, one last thing I want to highlight is the what if there's disagreement. And so one of the stakeholders in this journey started to challenge us leaving and said, hang on, Andy, if your vision is million business people and strategy, wouldn't it be better to stay in Reading and leverage the brand of Bethel and leverage this and do that? Like, that would be the best strategy. And we got into a slightly heated, but which from his perspective was just an engaged conversation. From me, it was like a little bit uncomfortable in pushing back on me. Like surely you should be staying here and leveraging this and do this and we could do this.
This makes sense.
This makes sense. And in the end, I walked away from that conversation saying, that's right. And now I'm like, have I heard wrong? It kind of questioned everything. That night I woke up in the middle of the night and I was reminded of a scripture where Jesus was with Peter, James and Andy. Remember that story? Well, you put your name in there. And Jesus is the founding creative entrepreneur of the universe. He brings this kingdom, which is a business idea that every single person gets healed, corruption gets reversed, everywhere they go, it's turned, death can't hold you. It's like, would you want that business idea? Could you do anything with that business idea? If that was yours, could you package it, sell it, and scale it? Yes? Would it be hard? No. I mean, everywhere you go, stuff happens. You say something.
They think it's a trick question.
It's
They're
not a trick
holding
question.
back.
This is obvious. And then Jesus says, okay, boys, lean in. You're on a sign here. We're going to call it a covenant. And you're in at ground level. You're an equity partner in this company that's going to launch and go global. And you're thinking, this is a no-brainer. This is going to, we're going to nail it. This is going to be like unicorn. No, there's nothing compared to this. This is going to go boom. And so you're like, I'm in. Where do I sign? Jesus says, well, we're actually going to have a covenant. It's called communion. It's going to be with my blood. Oh, yeah, I'm cool. Let's do this. And then Jesus says, now, boys, here's the strategy. I'm going to go pick a fight with the religious leaders. They're going to hand me to the Romans. And the Romans are going to spread my blood from here up to the top of that hill. And then they're going to torture me to death. The worst known death known to humanity. That's the strategy to scale this business. And Andy says, heck no, Jesus. Actually, the words were stronger. Dad, I've got a better strategy. I've been listening to John Maxwell, Good to Great, How the Mighty Fall, Built to Last, 4 Disciplines of Execution. I've been listening to all these prophetic words. I have got a strategy that we can take you and this business model and we can scale it. And Jesus looks straight at me and says, you are mindful of the things of earth and not of God. And I wake up and I realize, you know what? It's not about the best strategy. It's about obedience. And even if we leave Redding, California, and this nest of friends and connections, and if nothing works, even if we don't get the house we want, the place we want, the business that we want, the income that we want, the school we want, am I being obedient? And that came down to bedrock. The best strategy is obedience. So sometimes disagreement is an absolute gift. Because you need to know, will you be obedient or will you defer to the loudest voice in the room that's even louder than Jesus? Are you mindful of the things of God or of the things of human origin?
You have to know that. So our youngest is in a boarding school, and it's an amazing opportunity. It's mostly funded by the school. You know, has to wear the blazer and tie every day. Girls don't have to wear the tie, but you know, Ivy League boarding school. But she gets in, and all the way through it was a Jesus idea. I knew the first time I saw it was possible, I started crying. It was never in our heart to send her to boarding school, but I knew it was the Lord. Oh, and I felt like the Lord said, He's taking her there. She needs this for her. I'm taking her. I'm like, this is my baby. I'm supposed to have 2 more years with her. Anyway, fast forward, she does all the application process. She gets in. She knows she's got funding. And now she's scared because it all sounds great until you start imagining it at 15, 16, leaving home and being in a new place on the new side of the States. And she turns to me and she said, hey, Mum, this was God's idea, right? You know that God is in this. And I said, yeah, remember, you know, what He said? Remember how He said you need this where He's taking you? And she said, yeah. And she we're walking down the road, she stood up taller and she went,
I could do this.
Okay then. And I think there's something about, like Andy's saying, when the disagreement, there's something about when you step into the new season where you know that He's with you, that you've heard His voice, and you kind of shake yourself off. Okay, doesn't matter what comes, doesn't matter what's in front of me, but He's with me and He'll make a way. And it won't be easy, it'll be messy, it'll have mold on it sometimes. It won't be what you expect, but that you know He's with you is huge. It's huge.
Yeah. So close your eyes for a moment. Some of you walk through this where the dream, the hope, the vision is actually dead and rotted, and it's 3 days old or 4 days old. It's like it's gone, and you think it's over, and actually God's saying, no, this is part of the process. Unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it will never produce the harvest that He intended. It's like you bring Him your castle of Lego and He's pulled it apart. You think it's all over. He's like, no, I've got something better in store for you. So I just bless you right now to be able to see from heaven's perspective with what He is doing in you, through you, and around you. That the very things that you thought were to your harm is actually your promotion. So even as you sit in this, I just release the pleasure of God, that He's with you when it's difficult. He's with you when it's easy. He's with you when it smells of death and decay. He's with you through the valley of deepest darkness. His rod is your comfort. It's Psalm 23, fully alive. So I just bless you in that. And just as you sit there, what, from our story, from this case study, where are you at? Where do you find yourself in that story? Is it the hearing? Is it the translating? And I need to talk to the stakeholders? Is it that there's somebody's voice that I have not paid attention to? Is it there's an application that you're pushing against the wall, but you're pushing at the wrong angle? Because there's actually not a wall, you're just pointing the wrong way. It could look slightly different. It's the what's behind that. Just as you pause and reflect on that, what is highlighted for you? So now pick up your pen and write down, this is what's most significant for me. This is what I must pay attention to. Or this is where I need to lean in.